We are back. It is Kevin's Corner here as we have reached the quiet period of the Colts and NFL offseason. We will continue with weekly pods. We'll probably take off July 4th, continue with weekly pods leading up to training camp. A little bit of a tease, and I guess it's not earth-shattering news by any. We are going to do a little rebranding of the podcast coming up here in a few weeks. Nothing, again, earth-shattering by any means. But just from an SEO standpoint, maybe a little change of title and a little different logo action. But don't be alarmed. As long as you subscribe, it'll still pop up right into your feed. And how about a shameless plug for reviews? Not something we do very often here on this. So, yeah, if you would love a rating and review, we would greatly, greatly appreciate that from a podcast standpoint. Eddie Garrison, always good to see your face. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Did you have a good Father's Day yesterday?
I did. Tremendous drama in the United States Open. Wanted Rory, certainly, but boy, in sports, man, you want stars, you want great venues, and you want heroics and nerves and all of it to be on display, and certainly you got all of that. So, yeah, it was unbelievable, really, to watch all of that unfold. So,
did they get you any presents?
Yeah, I'm going to be taking a golf trip here on
nice.
on the horizon. So, and we went to Vegas I guess that had been about a month ago at this point for our 5-year wedding anniversary. So Maddie and I kind of looked at each other and thought, you know what? In case we lose a lot of money in Vegas, let's not spend any more on a useless Mother's Day or Father's Day gift. So, had a great day yesterday. Thank you to Mads and the kids for making me feel special, and happy Father's Day to my dad, my father-in-law, and all of our dads out there. Let's focus minicamp takeaways here, Eddie, on today's podcast. You know, we'll sneak in a little bit of Anthony Richardson. I probably want to do a big Richardson pod, maybe more next week, kind of all-encompassing on him. But, you know, there are a lot of other takeaways, I think, exiting the spring that just with Richardson's right shoulder soreness, we didn't have a chance to focus on last week's pod, or I guess about a week and a half ago at this point. I'd say one thing I did want to mention on Richardson, because I had several people reach out to me after last week's pod of like, hey, you know, I was surprised to hear your thoughts injury-related on Richardson. Like, you seem a little bit more worried than I thought you would. And I guess to kind of simple it down, Eddie, a little bit, we have this grand question with Richardson about his injury, play style, ability to be available. We have that question, right?
Mm-hmm.
That question is almost solely due to people hitting him when he has the football.
Correct.
Like if he's taking on more hits with running it, or obviously he's in the pocket, et cetera, and he takes sacks and hits like that. And that's the whole, again, limit, not eliminate debate that we've gotten into. This recent thing here, this is separate from that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the right shoulder soreness has nothing to do with people hitting him or the wear and tear of playing 17 games in a season, or, again, running the football 12 times in a game, and now all of a sudden he's taken 8 or 9 more hits than, you know, Joe Burrow has taken, or, you know, again, insert your other quarterback here. So that is where I think you have maybe one that's more on the front burner and the other's on the back burner, but now you have kind of 2 items on the burners.
Uh-huh.
And in my opinion, you didn't have the other one. I wasn't worried about the right shoulder until, you know, minicamp unfolded. And again, I don't think it's going to linger. I don't think it's going to be a huge concern, but it's the mosquito bite that's reappeared. And I thought it was kind of gone. And that doesn't include the other one, which is bigger. The other one is more of almost stuff you can't really control of. Again, guys are hitting you on a week-in, week-out basis. You never know when an injury is going to pop up. Those sorts of things. So,
is this more scar tissue for you than anything with your level of concern of just Andrew Luck and then even Peyton Manning dating back?
I'm really not
with the
trying
neck?
to go there. I trust me, Eddie. It's a great question to ask because obviously, you know, kind of lived both of those, especially Luck. And I consciously say to myself, don't go there. Like, try to get that out of your head. So again, that's where I think when I talk about the shoulder, it's popped back up. Do I think it's all of a sudden going to be massively prevalent throughout August and September? I don't think so, but I also don't know. Because workload-wise, what just happened? Anthony Richardson had soreness develop on a Wednesday practice, sat out the rest of Wednesday, and sat out Thursday. And now what? A month and a half break, right?
Mm-hmm.
When July 24th rolls around, there's no month and a half break time. There's no ability to sit for a week. If you sit for a week in camp, now you're missing precious reps. If you sit for a week during the season, you're now missing precious game time. So that's where you've lost kind of your margin for error if the shoulder persists. Now, if the shoulder doesn't, boom, that's gone, okay? That's out the window. Good. But you still have the other one that's dangling over here. And the other one is the red jersey's off, and now people are hitting him. So it's like you basically have two different injury scenarios here. Again, one I think is a little bit more worrisome than the other, and that would be him taking the wear and tear of hits versus the shoulder. But the shoulder is at least back on the burner. Again, I don't think it's on the front burner, but it's at least something you have to acknowledge there. So I guess inevitably we'll get more into this on next week's pod, but I also want to focus more on Richardson, the player, as well when we get into kind of second year expectations and thoughts on that. But I did get a couple questions injury related on number 5, so I wanted to make sure that we threw that in there. Anything else Richardson wise before we get into other camp takeaways?
I think it's just fascinating how polar opposite we are with how we view this, because I'm more of the it's going to happen camp. Like it's just what happens when you have a shoulder surgery, and it's a part of the rehab and getting back to where you are. Like he's what he said on the Pat McAfee show that he was in a 5 of an 8-month recovery with the shoulder surgery. So I experienced my dad go through 2 rotator cuff surgeries. I heard your conversation with Will Carroll, Bill Polian on with us on Corey and Company, and everyone is essentially in the same boat. Like, yeah, it's nothing to worry about. And yes, shoulder soreness is going to happen just because of the nature of the body part and the surgery itself.
Yeah, and again, if that's all fine and well, you still have the other injury.
Correct.
Question. That's the wear and tear. So that's where I'm getting at. It's like you have two separate. And as much as people say, I'm not worried, this and that, everybody said that about Andrew Luck. Mm-hmm. And we saw how that unfolds. So I guess if you want to go to scar tissue, maybe I'm bringing that back up. But I just think there's an element of no one truly knows. Each body's unique. Each rehab is different. I've said this before about Richardson, and I said it to Will Carroll. He has he's a specimen physically. And that brings unique body. We just saw one of the most unique looking golfers ever win the U.S. Open. What Bryson DeChambeau does physically is different. And what happened with Bryson? At one point, he went through an injury-riddled 18-month, 24-month period. Just bodies are weird. Bodies are different. You never know how things are going to develop off of that. So I don't want to focus anymore on Richardson. We've probably done it longer than I wanted to anyways. But let's get into some other camp takeaways.
Somebody that you've said in reference in that same, phrasing of bodies being different and players sustaining different types of injuries, on your article, 5 takeaways from Colts offseason program. Number 1 was the Anthony Richardson health. We've already covered that. Number 2, Jelani Woods making plays.
Yeah, and this is probably a little bit more OTA-centric. Eddie, I thought he had a quieter mini camp, did have a drop that I remember noticing on one of those days. But just the fact that Woods was out there and that Woods was making plays is a very positive sign to obviously what transpired in 2023 for him. Again, we all remember that Pittsburgh game. I think late in his rookie season, he was so good that night, and then mysteriously, Jeff Saturday and the coaching staff barely played him the next 2 games after that. I mean, it was a Bernard Ryman type late season moment from him. And I go back to his first ever training camp when Matt Ryan did not do this very often, but Matt Ryan absolutely undressed him on the field at Grand Park for just a lack of, mental, whatever. Concentration. Yeah, thank you. It's a better word to use on a particular rep. And I think there were times where it was early on difficult for him to kind of earn the quarterback and the coaching staff's trust. And then as his rookie year played out, he started to earn it. And then, of course, you didn't see that transpire necessarily into further reps there late in the 2022 season, and then obviously the hamstring injuries in 2023. So we've talked about this position group a lot, Eddie. Can someone emerge? Because right now I have zero clarity whatsoever on tight end. I have flip a coin. 1 week it might be Mallory and Ogletree. The next week it might be Alley Cox and Granson. Just flip a coin on it. Can Jelani Woods get there? A third-round pick on a tight end is no joke. I mean, that is some value in there. So back healthy, back making a few plays. Not a ton, but making a few. Very good signs for number 80.
Does it really matter in terms of the tight end position? I know we talk about it a lot in terms of someone going to step up. And I know you look at some of the top teams last year, they all had some of the best tight ends in the NFL. But with Adonai Mitchell, Josh Downs, Michael Pittman Jr., and Jonathan Taylor, do you really need one of those tight ends to step up to be the guy? If you have 3 good wide receivers, hopefully, and then still have Alec Pierce, who I think Chris Ballard and company still expect big things from.
I think it's important because I think it helps you just from a schematic game plan standpoint. If the other team fears you and a particular player, I think it helps. And also, I thought what made Jack Doyle so key in his time here, Eddie, was he was unpredictable. And by that I mean this. You brought Doyle on the field and you're not tipping your hand. There are certain tight ends in this league where you bring them on the field and you're like, oh yeah, that guy's a blocker. You know, when he's on the field, they run it 84% of the time. Oh, when that guy's on the field, they throw it 73% of the time. You don't want to have that. You know, if you need to go 2 minute and run it and throw it, or you want to go hurry up and you want to keep personnel on the field, you want to have a versatile tight end that can do both for you. So, you know, depth is, you know, it's a nice thing to have. Spreading the ball around is all good and well, but I think if you can have that individual to emerge and not have consistent turnover at that position, I do think that's key.
Number 3 on your list from your 5 takeaways from the Colts offseason program. This is on 1075thefan.com. No defensive back moves. Of course, the secondary was already thin going into mandatory minicamp and OTAs. And then you have obviously Daniel Scott go down with the ruptured Achilles. So that safety position is even more thin now than it was heading into training camp, or I guess you could say the offseason.
You know, Eddie, ultimately actions speak louder than words. And right now the actions tell you that they continue to be very bullish on their young defensive back room. And I keep on saying defensive back room, you know, because it's corner and safety in that realm. And this is different than how they have operated before. And, you know, think back to the Chris Ballard era. Rodney McLeod signed in May? Think about the veteran corners they have signed at different points to 1 and 2, and Desir might even got a 3-year deal at one point. You know, they have done that at various points in the Ballard era. So far, we have not seen any of that. And, you know, Daniel Scott has been one of the guys that they have been most public about and believing there's something there. And for him to go down, you know, I posted a depth chart to our website, 1075thefan.com. I mean, that depth at safety right now, Nick Cross, I guess, has earned the starting job next to Julian Blackmon. And I say earn very loosely. And the backups are Ronnie Harrison Jr. and Rodney Thomas II, who's been benched on multiple occasions. And Ronnie Harrison was, you know, a linebacker at one point last year. So it's just kind of crazy how that has evolved. But, you know, this was a position group that obviously we had a lot of eyes on, and we will continue to have a lot of eyes on it. And, you know, that's what, you know, you kind of get into, you know, a guy like A.D. Mitchell, you're like, man, consistent playmaking. And then, you know, somebody will chime in, well, yeah, look at the DB room he's going up against. It's like, well, yeah, I get that. You know, unfortunately, this is all we can go off of right now. But if and when do we see a move here? Is it going to continue this way? You know, last year it did, remember? I mean, they continue to stick with Darrell Baker Jr. Throughout there. Is that what we're going to continue to see here at both corner and safety?
But are there names that they are high on that we just haven't talked about? Is it Ronnie Harrison? Is it Nick Cross?
Clearly, yes. I mean, to answer your question, they obviously are high on him, or else they would make moves.
Right.
But in that instance, like, again, Cross.
But I just feel like sometimes it's always that guy we don't look at or talk about that ends up being something. Kind of like...
Yeah, sure, something. But again, is the something Darrell Baker Jr.? Like, or is the something...
Like Rodney Thomas, his rookie year. Like
Sure. Okay, Rodney Thomas is a perfect example. Is it Rodney Thomas as a rookie or Rodney Thomas year 2?
Right.
As a rookie, provided, I thought, nice playing for you. As a second-year player, looked much more like a 7th-round pick. So that's the question you have of like Nick Cross. I mean, there's been a moment or two in his career was like, oh, wow, I see why they traded up in the round 3. But then he started 4 games in 2 years at a wide open position. He should have that thing on stranglehold. So that's the question you have here. And, I've said it a million times, and I'll continue to say it until camp gets here and throughout camp. I just think Joel A. Erickson saying, raising the floor of that room. It's fine to want the high ceiling and the young guys, but I think raising that floor is really important, particularly at safety.
Our second last takeaway, you just highlighted how he was having a good camp, that being A.D. Mitchell.
I just posted something on AD on the website, 1075 The Fan, and Eddie, what I wanted to get into more was the why, okay?
The why in what aspect?
A.D. Mitchell had a good spring. A.D. Mitchell, people are high on. Why? Okay, so why are they high on him?
Or why did? Okay.
No. Getting away from why he fell.
Okay.
We've already done stories on why he fell and all that. We've already talked about it. No. Why are people high on him exiting the spring? Okay, first, it's the action. What were the actions? We were out there for 5 to 6 practices. I would say on 4 to 5 of those days, he made 1 to 2 one-on-one separation down the field type plays that no one else in that wideout room was making as consistently as he was. And frankly, if I want to even go back to the past couple years, I don't recall Colts wideouts making those sorts of plays on a frequent basis. So again, that's the action. Now go to the words, and ultimately the actions mean more. But if you go to the words, think about it in this light. Jim Bob Cooter explaining, he comes from Steve Sarkisian, he comes from Texas. It's an NFL, system, from a route concept standpoint, we really feel like he's got a pretty good knowledge base already. Okay, that's high praise from a rookie. And it's like, I appreciate like the uniqueness and the praise of it's something very specific and makes sense. All of that checks. Listen to Michael Pittman Jr. talk about A.D. Mitchell. I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot of how he gets out of his breaks. He brings something that is different to our wideout room. So the actions of repeating a couple plays down the field, all of that is there. But again, it's the words of that. I mean, that to me is something that really, also stands out to me of it's his peers describing him in ways that I don't know if it resonates a little bit more, but it's just different than I hear a lot of people talk about rookies. I think there's a genuine nature to Michael Pittman Jr. being like, no, I'm learning something from him. He's different than anything else we have in that room. Jim Bob Cooter. No, we feel like, he's come in here and he's been able to pick up things pretty quickly because he comes from, a head coach in college that I think has a really well-respected offensive mind, those sorts of things. So, look, it's going to be different in camp, and it's another level, and Colts corners aren't elite, but it's still something. And how do rookies get on the field? Through consistent playmaking and earning the coach's trust. And right now, in spring, I think that has occurred for A.D. Mitchell. That has occurred.
Even when you just look at his physique compared to the rest of the room, his is different. Like, it's different from Pittman, it's different from Pearson, it's different from Downs, obviously. I mean, he's got size on Downs, but in terms of, he's just well-rounded. Like, he's built the right way. He looks like a guy who can go in and compete and win immediately as a rookie.
Yeah, and you know what? To me, it's a little bit of a combination of Pierce and Moncrief's body types. Like, they're all very similar, height and weight, if you look at, Pierce and Moncrief. But, like, Moncrief, I thought, had a little bit more of an ability to, do some stuff underneath. Pierce, more of an ability to go over the top. And I think Mitchell can kind of marry both of those things. And, again, I'm trying and hoping to get into the why. Well, like, okay, because, people can be very judgmental when it comes to rookie production or practice highlights,
Yeah.
Oh, we've seen this before. It always happens. Okay. At times, we have seen guys flash. But let's get more into that. What is it different? Is it the same? Why is he flashing? What is the skill set? Those sorts of things. And I think when you watch Mitchell, it's a little different than what we've seen. Now, again, camp's a different level. Corners are going to be better. Ultimately, he's got to earn the trust of blocking and doing some other things to become a full-time wideout, all that stuff. But I hope people appreciate a little bit of the background on that.
I know you mentioned the blocking aspect of it. I think that's another reason why I think he could just be, to start out the year, kind of like Cincinnati did this with Jamar Chase a lot his rookie year. They primarily used him as just a route runner / wide receiver because they had guys that can block on the perimeter. Now, Jamar Chase obviously got better with that over the time, and I'm not comparing Adonai Mitchell to Jamar Chase, but they can do that a little bit with Alec Pierce just because I think Alec Pierce is a terrific run blocker with Michael Pittman Jr.
Sure. No, I mean, obviously Pierce has done something, and I know the competition has been great, but he's done something to earn 99% playing time, week in and week out in his career.
All right, final takeaway from you from the mandatory offseason program for the Colts position battles updates.
Yeah, and you know what, Eddie? I'll sum it up like this. Clarity on some, no clarity on others.
Let's start with outside cornerback.
It's funny you start there because the clarity's in the secondary.
Mm-hmm.
Which you would think, as much as we've talked about secondary, there wouldn't be clarity. But
no kidding.
Right now, if I'm Juju Brents, I'm Jalen Jones, and I'm Nick Cross, I'm sleeping well. And if I'm Dallas Flowers or Rodney Thomas II, I'm thinking, wait a minute, when am I going to get that opportunity? Because, there's been years like Rodney McLeod, Nick Cross, for example. It was literally every other rep, or it might have been every other day. But one would be the starter one day, boom, then the other one would flip-flop. In the spring, we did not see that. Now, will we start to see any of that come camp time? But right now at outside corner, obviously Kenny Moore's a mainstay. I would put Juju Brents as the other base outside corner with Kenny. And then when you go into nickel, you slide Kenny inside. I would say Jalen Jones leads on Dallas Flowers. Now, the fact that Dallas participated every day in spring is pretty amazing. Tore that Achilles in October. So, and I like Dallas. I mean, I actually like Jalen a little bit too. But I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit more of Dallas, once he continues to get closer to 100%. And then you go back to free safety. I mean, it's Cross. And frankly, I mean, I haven't seen much of Harrison or Rodney Thomas in the starting lineup. They have given Cross the starting job. And we'll see if he gets pushed in any way, shape, or form in camp. But right now, he has that at free safety next to Julian Blackmon. So this is it, 4 starts. And as Gus Bradley said, you need a strong communicator. You need range. You need a, open field tackle guy. And we'll see if Cross continues to earn that job.
You hit on outside corner and free safety there. Number 2 outside wide receiver.
Right. And this to me, like this and tight end are much more up in the air. Tight end is a true, in my opinion, flip of the coin. The thing about number 2 outside wideout, if you want to view that, obviously Pittman would be number 1. It's not like an outright benching, Eddie. It's not like you and I competing for left guard and the winner wins it and the loser comes out for field goal block.
Right.
And that's it. Obviously you can split up that playing time with Pierce and Mitchell much more to your discretion. But right now, there's part of me that's like, is it when, not if, with A.D. Mitchell? Is this a little... It's not the exact same, but, we had this conversation about Richardson and Minshew last year at this time. You knew it was inevitable. I don't know if we're there, but it just seems like A.D. Mitchell's humming. And when does that become a actual, clear lines defined in the depth chart? Tight end, don't ask me Colts fantasy questions here. I just, I don't know, man. It's so wide open.
I saw you getting a little bit of going around a little bit last week on podcasts and
making
such.
The fantasy round. Yeah. I typically do that during the summer. I enjoy that. You forget how in depth. I mean, they're like grilling me about Trey Sermon and Evan Hall, and yeah, I mean, I guess it makes sense, but yeah.
Those are questions that we need to know.
Well, sure.
You didn't put that on the position battles tab there.
Don't draft a Colts tight end. That would be where I'm at on that end.
What about the number 2 running back position? That wasn't on your takeaways.
I think Sermon for sure, first and second down, and then Hall or Goodson as the third down guy. But again, that's something that I want to continue to monitor there. But part of me is also like, dude, you're paying Jonathan Taylor how much money? Bell cow. I mean, run him into the ground obviously sounds strong, but that's kind of where I'm at there.
Yeah. You ready for Twitter questions?
I am.
Only 3 to get to on today's podcast. If you have any, as always, you can send them to Kevin at KBowen. Are you still 1070 on Twitter?
Still 1070, sir.
And then myself at Eddie Garrison _ Of course, you can always drop them in the YouTube comments as well. We do check those and interact occasionally. Low End Theorist is the first question on today's podcast. Hope you and the family are well, KB. Wondering what you saw from Latu over the mini camp. I haven't seen or heard from much buzz around him.
You know, it's funny. Jim Bob Cooter, during his media availability, he described this time during the spring as a passing camp.
Yeah.
Not a mini camp, a passing camp. And the unfortunate nature is obviously Latu is going to impact the passing game, but passing camp really means 7-on-7. You know, it doesn't mean 11-on-11. So it's just unfortunate. You know, Eddie, if you're going to tell me, hey, find me a defensive lineman that like really caught your eye this spring, I wouldn't say any of them. It's just the nature of, you know, the lack of pads.
Yeah.
And even the lack of like full throttle nature when it comes to the pass rush. There's just a few more periods, I think, when you get to, you know, camp of that stuff. But I can't wait for individuals. Bernard Ryman against Latu, you know, 7-9 and 9-7 going against each other. Cannot wait for that. You know, usually Quentin Nelson to Forrest Buckner is always a matchup that you like to see. But for me, it's going to be so much of Ryman and Latu. So just continue to be blown away by how he's wired. I just think there's so much there with his story.
Have you seen him line up primarily on one end or the other so far? I know it's a limited sample size,
I'm trying to think. I definitely saw him opposite the left tackle during rookie minicamp, and boy, I feel like I saw him on the other side during rookie camp. So, I mean, that's the thing about UCLA. If I'm not mistaken, Eddie, it was pretty close to a 50-50 split on both sides. Where again, I think, you know, kind of like the A.D. Mitchell stuff. Okay, let's get more into the why. You know, you can be a double-digit sack dude, and you can just simply roast people with your athletic ability and have no variety of moves, and you line up in the same spot every time. That's not Latu. Latu was versatile and had a variety of moves. So that's why people are higher on him to make an earlier impact than most young pass rushers.
Second Twitter question comes from Adrian. What's your input of Will Mallory going into year number 2? For some reason, I have high hopes of him taking a big leap this season. Kind of funny to get a tight end question after your comment earlier.
Yeah, think about Mallory, and you kind of forget how hurt he was last year at this time.
You started the year with a foot injury, right?
During rookie camp, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we saw him the rest of the spring, and then in camp, I think he was banged up pretty deep into camp.
Didn't he make an appearance in the third preseason game? It was like very briefly.
Right, but I want to say he might have been like him and Juju were like the last ones to get on the practice field.
Yes.
At some point at Grand Park. You know, he flashed a couple of big plays. Didn't he have the fastest 40 of any tight end in the combine? Mallory's a guy that I'm like, it's one of those things where the tight ends start to get in the game or get into practice. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Mallory's one of them. And, you know, a 5th round pick for a tight end is not nothing to sneeze at. He, you know, obviously has the lineage from a Mallory standpoint. That name certainly resonates here in this state from a coaching standpoint. It's the son and the nephew and the grandson of, you know, so many so many football coaches. So, yeah, Mallory is a guy that I would like to see a little bit more of. You know, Eddie, are they going to keep all 5?
Oh boy, can you afford to keep 5?
Right. And then who do you try to sneak through, assuming you're going to sneak one of them through? So I think all of that is great debate. It was kind of wild to me because I thought Mallory had a couple of plays of note last year, kind of run after catch stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Warren Sharp, the analytical guru out there. He tweeted out the teams of the most 30-plus yard plays from last season.
Uh-huh.
Colts ranked 5th on that list.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, does anything need to say more about Shane Steichen than that?
No.
And that he knows what he's doing?
No.
I mean, just the ability to create big plays with that personnel is just such a hat tip. And it's not like Richardson had 3 30-yard runs when he played.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have any. So, I mean, you know, you would think at some point Richardson, you know, not that he does that on a weekly basis, but, you know, gives you some of that. And I also thought Richardson didn't have the amount of, like, deep ball action like he usually does on that end. So,
I can only think of one. It was Josh Downs against Tennessee, the game he got hurt.
Right, and I'm even talking like true, like uncork, like
right.
You know, 7-man protection. That, you know, hell, maybe even 9-man protection. That so. I expect that to continue to be high, obviously, with Richardson and, of course, with Taylor. I mean, how many snaps did those two play together? So Yeah, just such a credit to Shane Steichen.
Are you a journalism major technically from Indiana University, or were you like an English major?
I am a sport communication print major. I think I got a journalism certificate and a marketing minor.
Okay, that's much more lengthy than mine. I was going to ask you, why do we pronounce it preface when it's preface?
Oh, gosh. I mean, you're asking questions about the English language that no one knows the answers to.
I bring that up because
aren't we like the hardest language to learn?
Yeah, no kidding. I bring that up because Alex's question is, let me preface, I don't take any ranking seriously, but Chris Sims has Anthony Richardson ranked at 32 overall amongst all quarterbacks. Where do you think he realistically ranks amongst the league? He's got to be in the low 20s, in my opinion. Also, what do you think of the nickname for the duo of Richardson and Mitchell as the 5 and dime?
Oh, look at that. How about that? Yeah, 5 and dime. I like that.
What about nickel and dime?
Nickel and dime certainly works. I remember, did you ever watch the show Two-A-Days with Coach Probst and Hoover?
I did not.
On MTV back in the day? They had a defensive end by the name of Repeat, and he described his girlfriend in one episode as, she's not a dime, but she's at least a 9. Do you take that as a compliment?
At least a 9?
Yeah, I guess that's a, I don't know if she wanted to be a dime, a dime obviously be a 10, 10 out of 10.
Right, yeah.
It's going on that scale. I have not tried to use that on a Mother's Day card or anything like that with Maddie.
You should. See how that goes over.
Probably stay away from that.
You think the 5-year anniversary would not become 6 if you did that?
Yeah, I would have been having to make a lot of money in Vegas to try and appease that one. Okay, Sims with Richardson. Was this literally like I'm ranking the 32 quarterbacks for 2024?
No, it's Chris Sims. It's not that straightforward.
Yeah.
He did it by like tiers or something stupid. I'm trying to find it.
Okay, as you find it, let me just chime in. That seems low, of course. I do think there's a lot of volatility to Richardson.
Okay, so yeah, by the ranking, he is 32nd, but he's in a category of the young and the reckless.
Who
with
does he got?
Sam Darnold, Bryce Young, and Jameis Winston.
I mean, gosh, is Jameis young anymore? Isn't Jameis like 30?
And then he had Ryan Tannehill 31, and Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy, Jaden Daniels, Michael Penix Jr., Will Levis, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Derek Carr, Russell Wilson, all ahead of Anthony Richardson.
All of those guys were ahead?
Yes.
Wow. Yeah, a few of those certainly surprised me. The thing I think we have to keep in mind about Richardson, and by no means is this, holding Chris Sims' water, because let me be clear, I think Richardson's too low on that list. 173 snaps is so small.
Yep.
Like, I would be willing to bet, Eddie, and this is such an arbitrary thing to say, but he might have like the fewest ever starting reps, practice reps of a guaranteed locked-in second-year starter.
Uh-huh.
I mean, like, there's no debate about him starting. And yet he only played 173 snaps, and it's not like he it's not like he practiced a ton either. So, the reckless nature, I think that is something that's interesting. I don't view him as reckless. Yeah, reckless is a term I think people use for running style, too. I don't view that with Richardson. Do you have questions about accuracy? It's a totally fine question to have. I think last year when he got hurt, I think he was like 32nd of 33 at the time in incompletion percentage. But to me, that's not reckless. Like, reckless is like you throw the ball to the other team a bunch, or again, throwing into triple coverage thinking that that's the right decision to make. Inaccuracy and reckless are two different things, in my opinion. So sure, cleaning up accuracy and tightening some of that up, but am I missing another interception? Was his only interception Tyson Campbell in that final drive? Did he have more? I feel like that was the only pick he had.
I can't remember.
The Rams game.
Yeah, that was his only pick.
Yeah, so I would not use that term. And, when you do those tier systems, Eddie, there's times where you have to, bend the rules, to put everybody in the same tier, which is just stupid because, not everybody's the same.
I know.
Each player is a snowflake. So I would not agree with that. I don't know. Sims kind of frustrates me.
He's got one funny category: poop or get off the toilet.
Ooh, who's in that one?
Daniel Jones, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields.
God, that's how I feel about Max Bowen right now. I'm like, dude, if you're going to act like you're going pee or poop, just poop, man. He's just fascinated with the toy potty right now.
Oh, is it because do you give him like a toy or a sticker or something?
Well, we're not like fully there yet. Rosie, has been potty trained for several months now. Does a great job with it, and he's just entertained by like oh wait, you get to sit on that thing? That thing looks kind of cool. So he sits on it, but and he says he's going potty, but then he gets off and.
So he truly does view it as the royal throne.
Yeah, something along that end. Any other Twitter questions?
Nope.
Let's focus on Richardson next week. Just kind of year two. Again, you can't talk about him without talking a little injury stuff, but I do want to focus on him as a player a little bit more. And then as July rolls around, we'll get into our annual series as we get ready for training camp. Article content still up on the website, 1075thefan.com. We'll continue that consistently here through the quiet times. Eddie Garrison, have a great week, man.
Thanks, you too.
Everybody, thanks for listening to this edition of Kevin's Corner. Signing off.